Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I apologise for the slight delay and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Council on 10 May 2023. And just a reminder to put mobiles on silent. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here or watching today. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interests of the people of the Wingecarribee Shire Council area and to act faithfully and impartially, carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declaration of conflicts of interests in relation to items listed for the consideration on the Council agenda or which are to be considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. Obviously, there are no apologies. General Manager, declarations of interest.
There are no declarations, Mr. May.
This meeting has been called to present the Draft Resourcing Strategy 2023-2033, Delivery Program 2023-25, Operational Plan 23-24, and Budget for consideration. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. So as you just outlined, this extraordinary meeting today is to consider 5 draft documents to go out on public exhibition. Before handing over to the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and the Manager Governance and Corporate Performance to take us through a short presentation, I would like to provide a broad overview and context to the draft documents you have before you today and will consider for endorsement for exhibition. I'd like to talk about the why that underpins the draft documents. Why Council prepares these documents is because we need to as part of the State Government Integrated Planning and Reporting Framework, but more importantly, it is to ensure that our Shire is a place that is healthy, respectful, provides for a productive community, learning and living in harmony, that we're proud of our heritage and we nurture our environment. And that Council is the custodian of community assets and on behalf of the community put in place actions supported by the resources that it has available. So the money that we have through our budgets, the long-term financial plan, the assets through our asset management plan, our people through our workforce, and IT through our digital plan. Those 4 plans are contained within the resourcing strategy that will be tabled today. Council uses land rates that all property owners contribute to direct towards this outcome, the vision for our community, and make positive impacts locally. The draft documents before you represent a significant and complex piece of work. They represent the outcome of professional officers' consideration of community feedback and sentiment that has been gathered over the last 12 plus months through a range of consultations that have been held, as well as the community survey undertaken in late 2022. It represents an analysis of trends and data, market comparison locally, regionally and within the state, external impacts such as rate peg, legislative changes at state and federal levels. It represents consideration of our short-term needs with the longer-term goals as set out in our community strategic plan, and also the principles of sustainability in the broadest sense in terms of social, environment, economic sustainability and the financial sustainability of this organisation as a council. As previously outlined, the organisation is moving through Horizon 1 of the roadmap, focused around a back-to-basics approach and the 3 Rs between 2022 and 2025. They are refocusing on our future and getting our strategic direction and strategies in place, reinvigorating our workplace in terms of culture and physical change, and rebuilding trust between the council and the community, and council and our broader stakeholder group. There are significant changes proposed in the draft operational plan and budget in the IT space as part of service reviews, and a continued focus on rebuilding of the organisation to be a leader in the community and in the broader local government industry. We have already come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Excuse me. Bedding down and streamlining our processes. Anyone who has led and managed a complex organisation will know and understand that change, in particular cultural change, that is sustainable and meaningful, takes a minimum of 3 to 5 years. The draft operational plan and the supporting budget have been set in this context to ensure that we have a sound basis to move forward. The draft operational plan and supporting budget has also been framed to support the community needs, wants and aspirations, and within the context and constraints of our long-term financial plan. Council, like all other organisations or businesses, has pressures on its revenues and expenditures and needs to make decisions to ensure sustainability, taking into account at the time the operating environment, impacting and influencing factors, as well as the needs of its community and customers. We have both. We also need to make responsible decisions today, not only for our community of today, but also future communities. However, unlike other organisations or businesses, our ability to raise revenue is constrained and limited. Our largest source of revenue, land rates, which all property owners in the Shire pay, with the exception of state government-owned land, is set by the IPART, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal. The IPART have set the rate peg for Wingecarribee at 4.1% for the 23-24 financial year. The CFO will talk in more detail about the context that we're operating in at the moment, but just in summary, that 4.1% in rate with the rate peg contrasts against inflation, or CPI, which is running around the 7% at the moment consistently, increasing costs associated with petrol, diesel, utilities, insurances, building and material costs, costs associated with emergency services levies, which all councils across the state collect through the rates to return back to the state to contribute towards emergency services such as RFS, SES and fire and rescue. Our rates make up approximately 70% of our total revenue. The balance of revenue comes from fees and charges, grants. Some grants are ongoing, such as the Commonwealth Financial Assistance grants. However, most are contested grants. We also have revenue from interest from cash investments at present. That is a positive thing given the interest rates, as well as developer contributions. How these are all dealt with are set out in the draft revenue policy, which forms part of the draft document today and is reflected in the draft fees and charges that Council is also considering today. The fees and charges, some are statutory, that is, they are set by other agencies, mostly state government. The balance of fees and charges are set by the Council. When setting these, professional officers take into account the cost of services provided and whether the cost should be partially recovered or fully recovered through those fees. They do benchmark against other organisations or councils, consider capacity to pay where we have disadvantaged communities, and the type of service that's being provided. Is it a service that provides greater good, that is, a not-for-profit for community-based organisations with profits directly rolling back into the community, or a profit-generating operation? Property owners' rates contribute to all services, programs and projects that Council deliver on behalf of the community, and those are outlined in the draft operational plan. They contribute to roads and drainage, environmental programs such as bush care, rehabilitation. They contribute to the provision of facilities to local SES, RFS, including the sheds and buildings across our Shire. Grants to local cultural, sporting and community organisations who in turn provide services to the community. These include Nunangoola, our regional gallery, the Southern Highlands Botanic Gardens, preschools and childcare centres who use council facilities at heavily subsidised rates, and sporting clubs. Library services, including mobile libraries to our villages, and a range of community development activities such as NAIDOC Week, Seniors Week, the Village Liaison Officer, our road safety program, as well as advocacy for our shire in securing and support of other agencies. All of these programs, projects and services are set out in the draft operational plan to share with the community. How your rates contribute to making our shire the special place it is. Now I'd like to hand over to the Manager, Governance and Corporate Performance to talk in a little bit more detail about the operational plan. Thank you, Ms. Lidgard.
Thank you, General.
Sorry, just can I interrupt? General Manager, what you said, is that going to be incorporated into the minutes? Yes. And the other officers will have their statements incorporated into the minutes? Yes,
and Mr. May, we also have a short presentation which will be attached to the minutes and made available on the website as per the briefing that Council received last week.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. This report presents Council's draft resourcing strategy, delivery program and operational plan, which includes the budget, revenue policy, fees and charges, and recommends they are placed on public exhibition for 28 days. In the year following an ordinary election of councillors, all New South Wales councils are required to review their integrated reporting documents. As council did not have a local government election in December 2021, a review and refresh of council's IPNR documents have now been undertaken. In April, council adopted its refreshed community engagement strategy and endorsed a refreshed community strategic plan for Wingecarribee Shire 2041. The draft delivery program and operational plan has been prepared in response to the community strategic plan and in consideration of council's resourcing strategy. The documents outline the services and projects council will deliver to work towards achieving the goals of the community strategic plan. The structure of the delivery program and operational plan have been reviewed and presented in a new format. This is to provide greater transparency to the community and promote accountability across each service area. It's intended that this will assist in providing the community with an overview of the breadth of services provided by council, the context in which each service operates, as well as the resource implications. This report recommends the draft documents be placed on public exhibition for 28 days, from the 12th of May through to the 9th of June. I'd also like to note, since publishing the documents with the agenda, the exhibition documents have been reformatted to enhance readability. During the exhibition period, drop-in sessions will be held in Robertson, Bundanoon, Colo Vale and Moss Vale. These sessions will provide an opportunity for residents to find out more and ask questions of council officers in relation to these plans. I'll now hand over to the CFO.
Just before you start, will hard copies of this be available at the council chambers and all libraries?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can... Perfect. Thanks. Council's total operating expenditure for 2023-24 financial year is $141 million. This funds ongoing expenditure. We've got a capital works program of $84 million and our total rates and annual charges is only $94 million. This includes our rates as well as water and sewer charges. As mentioned in the briefing 2 weeks ago, one of the largest drivers for the operating deficits was the revaluation of council's infrastructure in 2021-22, which saw an increase in about $12 million of depreciation year on year. If you can get the next slide, please. The rates peg has been mentioned a couple of times now, and going to mention it again. The 4.1% rates peg is in stark contrast to the excess of 7% of inflation that we're currently experiencing, with the all-Sydney CPI for March 2023 being 7.3%. Fees and charges, waste management fees, as well as water and sewer have all been indexed by about 7%. That's a general observation. There are obviously instances where that's been more. Salaries and wages has increased by 5.5%, while other operating expenditure increased by about 3%. Can we get the next slide, please? As part of the process, we've redesigned our service-based reporting to align with the organizational structure, and the budgets have been aligned similarly to align to services, which then align to our IPNR documentation. We've revised our overheads models, as well as the allocation for our FTEs. And the cost centralization was the last piece in that puzzle. Get the next slide, please. In terms of risks, the salary structure review that's currently underway has not been finalized yet, and the award negotiations are still in progress, so we're still working on a 5.5% increase at this point. Again, there's no contingencies in the operational budget relating to COVID-19 or any other natural disasters that we've experienced over the last couple of years. The interest rate is high, which on one hand is good for interest revenue, on the other hand it's our loans as we going towards our STP upgrades, they'll hit us quite hard. The workers' compensation and insurance premiums closely monitored, with the current projection about $2.6 million. If I could please get the next slide. Perfect. In terms of fees and charges, I've mentioned previously that most of them have been generally indexed by about 7%. There are 36 new fees, about 43 fees that have been discontinued, largely where we do not offer the service anymore. And there's 97 fees where the increase has been more than 10%. Even higher? Okay, thanks. The spread of the new fees is across most services that Council offers, but I'd just like to take you through some of the top 5 fees that we've identified where the increase is substantially higher than, I guess, the 10% that we flagged. Those are the 5 on the screen up there. They relate to compliance and DA fees. The first 2 compliance and the last 3 are DA related. If I can get the next slide, please. In terms of the storage for removed vehicles and trolleys, we have an increase of about 519% based on the $4.20 that we had in the previous financial year, which talks to other councils up on the screen. So if we're sitting at $26 for projected, no, I'm losing the word, proposed fee of $26, we're sitting in the range of other councils such as Waverley, Wallandilly, Goulburn, Mulberry, between $24 and to $15.20. However, there's a release fee in that instance where we do not. Get the next one. In terms of service of notices for impounded items, we are proposing to charge $65 per item or per notification, which is a 416% increase. You'll notice it ranges in somewhere in between Waverley, Mulberry, and Hornsby councils, offering between $27 and to the maximum of $300 on those items. Those notifications, rather. It's not an item. DA fees for developments over $500,000, we're proposing a notification fee of $695. Again, it sits in the middle between Waverley, Wallandilly, and Canada Bay. 3 different councils charging a range of fees. We're sitting in the middle. The additional design review modification fee of $3,753 is a 322% increase, which is the same as the other councils plus the 77% at this point. I believe those 3,508 are the 2022-23 adopted fees, and we haven't seen the final fees and charges for those councils. The building inspection fee similarly has gone up by 267% to $330, and again sitting amongst those 3 councils where in first instance it looks like it's $90, but there's a $250 base fee, so again somewhere in the middle. Thank you. The rates summary, so the mentioned previously we've got the 4.1% increase in terms of the rates peg. It and we've got a significant increase in property values. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. Suffice to say that if you've got a 74% increase in property value, it's not going to translate to a 74% increase in rates. It will be a proportionate increase of that 4.1% rates peg. If you could get the next slide. So you'll notice there, for instance, residential property, the average land value has gone up by 74%. That 74% land value increase is not going to be applied to your rates. We're pegged to the 4.1%. It all comes down to proportionality. So if we're talking to the property change, the property value change, if the property value is changed by more than the average increase, it'll be increased by the rate value is going to be increased proportionately to the rates peg limit. And there's more information on that on the slide. Thank you, General Manager. I'll hand over back to you.
Where do we start? Look, first of all, if I can congratulate all those involved in the preparation of this document. In my view, we've come a long, long way. Some of my recommendations relate to a commitment I've given that a newly elected council can hit the ground running. And I think in the land use planning arena, we're addressing that. But of course, there's also the financial side of the organisation, that those who may not have been exposed to local government finance can read it quite clearly. And I think that this council, before administration, used too many bulk figures. And it was very hard to differentiate who was spending what. And when it wasn't done in a function, it was more done in environment and etc. It becomes very hard to read where the money's going. I often get asked, does the council provide good value for their rate dollar? I still can't answer the question, but I know it's a work in progress. And there is a recommendation previously that the review of service levels has to be completed. I think it's in this next financial year. I see that the documentation says two, the council resolution says all, and I don't think it's a great task to do service level reviews. And that way, I don't see it as my role as administrator to play with service levels. That's a matter for the incoming council, and they will require information to make informed decisions. I have a few questions which I will deal with in a wash-up recommendation. I heard what the two gentlemen were saying earlier in relation to charges and fees, and I'll be seeking more information in relation to those charges. But at the same time, I don't think ratepayers should be subsidising through cost shifting what appears on the face of it to be happening. But I want more information in regard to that. Local government complains about cost shifting from the state. I think ratepayers should complain about cost shifting against rates and charges and fees. So I'll be seeking more information in relation to that. Whilst there's bulk figures on a consolidated basis, I'm going to be asking for consolidated under the operational plan figures for each of the headings, the function headings, so residents can see that on one page, but for the three funds. So I'll be asking for that. I am concerned that the question of productivity improvement has been addressed at a high level scale, but not further down in the organisation. So this year I'm going to nominate a figure to look at, and I think it's a reasonable figure, and I'll be recommending that go towards an emergency operations centre, which this community hasn't got and must have. And correct me if I'm wrong, General Manager, we've tried to get grants, we've tried and tried and tried, and finally we've been told no.
To clarify,
Yeah.
So we were told no against a particular program, and we have further meetings coming up with Reconstruct New South Wales. So we'll see what comes post state election, but we're still on the lookout.
But we can't look forever because, you know, an emergency, you never know. And I don't think this community should be caught out again. I'd like a press release prepared on rates. So many people are, I wouldn't say panicking, but raising with me the fact that their valuations have gone up so much. And I thank you for that. But a close reading of the documentation also shows that. So we need to issue a press release that, in effect, if I think it's roughly a 75% increase in values, if you're over the 75, well, you'll pay a bit more in rates. If you're under, you'll save. But the council's yield is still only the 4.1%. The road network condition assessment, which is happening at the moment, I believe that when that is finished, we should prepare draft programs for the next 4 years of where that money will be spent, particularly road resealing and the like. It's only draft, but residents can then see what chance they've got of having their street done. Now, the incoming council may want to change that. I'm happy to deal with professional advice and recommendations, but at least that will all be there. The report on page 43 indicates that review of developer contributions and servicing strategies won't be completed until June 2025. For me, that's too far away. If this council, when they're elected, is going to hit the ground running, they need to have all the information available to them prior to that date. And I'll be moving a recommendation that the General Manager provide a timeline in relation to the preparation of reports for Council's consideration on land use planning, including the preparation of a new LEP. It's critical that everything is there. So I think in relation to what Mr. Honest Faru mentioned, would now be an opportune time. I think it's important for the community to know that the council's not sitting on their hands in relation to Bowral Main Street. Sorry.
So yes, you're right. I might ask if I could, Mr. Park, to come up. So as the administrator, as you've advised, Mr. Administrator, we are going through a process of rebuild, and we're moving through. Part of that is that refocusing on the future and the strategic work, and you just don't produce an LEP overnight. So I'll ask Mr. Park to talk about the process and the work that's already happened, what's currently underway, how that contributes to the LEP, and then perhaps touching on Bowral Town Centre Master Plan and Bong Bong Street as an example of the type of work we're doing to actually form up the new LEP. Thanks.
And could I ask you address the question of parking on site? Because I thought that had been rectified anyhow, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr Mayor, I might start with the question of car parking on site, because otherwise I'll forget to come back to it. Look, you're right, there is an alternate solution that's been put in place that you'd be aware of. So Council have prepared a template voluntary planning agreement with a published contribution rate, which would allow, in lieu of providing parking on site for a development that can't meet its parking requirements on site, to have pay a monetary contribution that would go towards public car parking within the centre. So that's that part of it. I'm not familiar with the correspondence in relation to that particular application that was referenced, but I know that there is a policy position in place. The development assessment team, led by the Director of Community in place, are aware of that and are communicating that to people through things like the pre-lodgement meetings that I've been to, a few of those, and that's been communicated to applicants. So what else is on my list? Sorry. So going back to the LEP amendments, probably make the point that it's worth noting that while an amendment to the LEP or a new LEP and development control plan is not a specific action within the delivery program and operational plan, all of the work that we're doing is leading to a major review of both of those key sort of planning strategies or key planning frameworks. So starting with things like the local housing strategy and the local strategic planning statement set the really clear strategy for where we're headed in terms of land use in the Shire. And I think it's important to note that the LEP and the DCP are enablers of council's strategy. So what we're doing first is getting the strategy in place, but it's important to note that we're not waiting for 2 years until we've got all the strategy in place before we're incorporating those changes into the local environmental plan. And what we have set out to do is to review both the LEP and the supporting development control plans in sections, so starting with housing, and you would be aware, Mr May, that recently we reported up amendments to both Council's Development Control Plan and LEP in relation to medium density housing. So we've started with housing, we've recently gone out to consultation with the community on that, and over the next 6 months those changes will be incorporated into our LEP. So not waiting for 2 years until all of the strategy's done, we're amending the LEP as we go. In addition to obviously the low and medium density housing controls that we've undertaken, we've started work on the Barrel South New Living area, so the master plan and servicing strategy for that area. And again, those changes will be incorporated into both our local environmental plan and our development control plan, as well as directly informing the review of the contributions plan. So getting the strategy right and then using the development control plan and the LEP as the enabler to facilitate those strategies. In addition to those projects, I mean, we reported to Council relatively recently some of the strategic works program that my team are leading to that will ultimately underpin the major review of our local environmental plan and DCP. So the Barrel Town Centre Master Plan, a review of some of our infrastructure strategy, so community and recreation facilities, as well as an integrated transport strategy. I've got a bit of a mind blank about, an employment lands review, so a really critical component. So we looked at housing, we'll look at the employment lands and whether the planning framework meets the needs of our communities into the future in terms of employment lands. There'll be a major review of heritage coming before the council very shortly, as well as a review of our rural and environmental lands. And again, rather than waiting for all that to be done and then come out with a new LEP, we'll incorporate those changes when we have the information, so the planning framework is fit for purpose. And just very quickly, in relation to projects like the Barrel Town Centre Master Plan, again, the LEP is one of the tools that we use to implement these strategies. And what's come through loud and clear as part of the consultation so far is the appearance of Bong Bong Street, and particularly some of these buildings. And while council can't force people to redevelop their sites in the short term, what we can do is try to make it easier for them. And I know that the Director of Communities in place and his team have been working with some of these landowners to provide pre-lodgement advice. But what my team and others within council are also doing is working with landowners to look at what we can do in the short term to improve the appearance of some of these buildings. So we know that we've got a number of really key sites that are somewhat of an eyesore on the drive into town. So we're working with them to see how we can improve the appearance of those buildings in the short term while they go through the process of a development application, and then hopefully in the not too distant future start building on those sites. We're working with them to improve the appearance of those really key gateway sites and some of those key sites along Bong Bong Street to address what I think everyone can agree is a bit of a blight on the main street in the short term.
Thanks for that. Do you have any comment to make on my observations in relation to review of developer contributions and servicing charges, 30th of June 25?
Look, so our intention is that, and you'd be aware that we are undertaking, so we've commenced work on the integrated transport strategy and the other key piece of the needs analysis. So again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. The contributions plans, LEPs, they facilitate council's strategies. So it's really important to get the strategy right. So that's the community and recreation facility and the integrated transport strategy are the two critical needs analysis and strategies that we're developing so that we know that we're planning for and delivering infrastructure that will meet the needs of our communities into the future. It's anticipated both of those strategies will be completed at the end of this calendar year, and then we'll move towards a review of our contributions plans using that key evidence base. My expectation is that will be completed well before June of 2025.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to ask for a further report in relation to that. That alarmed me, particularly in relation, and I don't want to harp on this, with the community and recreation study. I want to be careful what I say about that, but there's a report coming on that. Is that to next meeting or the June meeting? To the June meeting. The lag time with that has caused, I believe, issues for the community, and if we're looking at the Bowral South area, we need to have a contributions plan well in place, in my view. So I'm going to ask for a report on that, but I can tell you it hinges back to, I was alarmed when I saw 3625, and then I was reminded of the meeting 2 weeks ago with the community and recreation study, which in my view takes us nowhere at this stage. Okay, thanks for that. The other issues that worry me, which I'll deal with in the recommendation, is a statement that we are transitioning our fleet to hybrid and electric vehicles, and then a strategy that report will be completed in the next financial year. I'm all in favour of moving to those environmental things, but I want to report on the effect of that on the 10-year financial plan. At what expense, what's going to pay if we're going to achieve those outcomes, if anything. And I don't want it to be taken that I don't agree with that, but I have a concern that could affect the forward financial plan, and I just want to make sure that is taken into account, because those are pretty broad statements, which the CFO is not responsible for, but it just worries me where that will take us. I read here also, in relation to telephone answering times, I really don't think that's the issue. We received 95,000 calls in 21-22. The average wait time was 1 minute and 48 seconds. Is that how long it took to answer the phone, or to get through to a productive employee to answer your question? I'm not saying that the people who answer the phones aren't productive, but I'm continually told that people still get transferred to one section and then another section.
I will ask the director to respond to that, but as a first comment, in the operational plan, you'll note that there's a KPI that relates to calls resolved on first contact. And so the intention is to skill up the customer service team, and part of what the Chief Information Officer is doing is putting in place a knowledge management system so we can capture all of the systems that we have and the processes to provide the customer service officers with up-to-date information they need, with the intention that we, if we can, answer questions at first contact rather than having it referred to an officer who may or may not be sitting at their desk. We have a lot of officers that are out in the field during the day, may or may not be physically there to take that call. I'll ask the director to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. I'm not sure there's much to add to that. Thank you anyway. The KPI that has been introduced is that resolved on first contact. The 1.54 seconds was the time that anyone was on hold waiting for our customer experience team to answer their call.
So that's the first part of the call, not the constructive part, but you're going to turn the first call into the constructive part. That's the aim.
That's the intention, part thereof, because then it still has to be through the customer charter that responsible officers, if it can't be resolved at first contact, we will also have a metric in place where council officers are responding to people within, the timeframes within the charter.
Look, I have no doubt that things are improving, and I think there will be a quantum improvement when DAs online becomes my words, not others, a source of truth for residents and applicants. And the more information we can get up on that, the quicker, the better. And it's going to make a quantum difference to the organisation in that customer service people aren't going to have to answer that call and then put it through to the planners. They'll be able to be productive in their outputs, and residents will just be able to look at the website with a guarantee that everything is there. And that's my aim, and I hope it's everybody's aim. And you can't go backwards and establish it, or you have to set a date from when it will operate from. But anyhow, that's the aim. I really don't have much more, but my recommendation is comprehensive, again, with an eye on I wouldn't say greater transparency, but ease of looking at what we have, and not the bulking up of figures. So is there any more comment from staff? Or yes.
Thank you, Mr. May. Just to round off the commentary. So the suite of draft documents that the professional officers have prepared and presented to you today are complex, and they are interrelated. So it's important to understand that they don't actually stand alone, that they do interrelate. So what is in the operational plan is funded through the budget. The budget relates to the long-term financial plan. So this year we've tried to make those documents as easy to read, and over the next 12 months and the next iteration will make it even easier. And trying to put it in plain English and get down to a level of detail that's more meaningful for our community. To assist our community and stakeholders to provide informed feedback on the draft documents during the exhibition period, we will be holding 4 information sessions, and these will be held at different locations across our shire. And the sessions are to explain the process so people understand that the exhibition period, how they can provide feedback, and also how the draft documents were developed, how they relate to the long-term community strategic plan, some of the financial intricacies. The reality is council has a finite amount of resource, so how do we actually allocate that? And how does that help us move towards the community strategic plan? Post-exhibition, all submissions will be reviewed, considered and compiled into a report that's intended to come back in June to council, to the June meeting. then for the council to consider the adoption of those documents. Thank you, Mr. May.
I hope everyone could hear me. I was trying to say this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to start again. From January 2024, that all income expenditure and full-time equivalent details be presented to Council to Level 4 Coordinator Responsibility Areas as part of the December 2023 Quarterly Review. 8, a press release be organised in relation to updated land revaluations and subsequent calculation of rates for 23-24. 9, upon completion of the Road and Footpath Condition Assessment Report, a detailed capital works program be updated and published on Council's website, listing the draft individual roads and other assets across a 4-year period. 10, a report be presented to Council on the status of its insurance portfolio, having regard to the decision of Council of 12 May 2021 that, quote, as part of the 21-22 operational plan, Council undertake a review of its insurance pool membership and coverage, with the options report to be brought back to Council during the first year of the new term. And I declare that carried. Is there any further information? Okay, yeah, thank you very much for your attendance. I look forward to submissions being received in relation to the document, and declare